Good evening. Tonight we're learning Maseches Pesachim Daf Tzadi Vav. A little bit of a long first Amud, but we're only going to be doing part of the second Amud, a little bit more than half. We'll go 2/3 of the way down to Tzadi Vav and Beis. After tonight, the next Daf we will have will be Saturday night. No Daf tomorrow night in honor of the Purim holiday. What's that? Yes, I will miss you as well. Thank you. But I'll see you Saturday night. I'll be in Skokie for Shabbos, and we'll do Daf Motzei Shabbos 8:40. This is Thursday's Daf, so we'll be set blot and a half Shabbos, blot and a half Sunday, and evened out again.
We're a blot ahead now.
This, when we finish tonight, will be this is Thursday's Daf. Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. That was like the last whenever we evened out. So tonight we're starting at the very bottom line of Tzadi Hey Amud Beis, and yesterday we were talking about a Mishnah that spoke about a year when it was Pesach Haba B'Tumah, and how there are some ripple effects of there being a Pesach Haba B'Tumah, and here is yet another impact of that Pesach Haba B'Tumah status. Bottom line, by Rav Yosef. Rav Yosef asks the following question: Dachku Tmei Mesim. If the people who are Tamei Mes and they pushed their way in, Va'achlu Emurei Pesach Haba B'Tumah, and they ate the emurim of the Pesach Haba B'Tumah. These are the parts of the animal that you're not supposed to eat. They're supposed to stay up on the Mizbeach. So says the Gemara, top of Tzadi Vav Aleph, Mahu, what would the din be in such a case? Would they have violated the Isra Achila of eating the emurim, yes or no? Do we say the ishtere tumas basar ishtere nami tumas emurim? That maybe because it's a year of Pesach Haba B'Tumah, so therefore because you can eat the basar Pesach Haba B'Tumah, you're allowed to do that. Therefore, you're also allowed to eat the emurim. Odilma, or perhaps my the ishtere. No, only the fact that the basar is mutter, that's because of Pesach Haba B'Tumah. But my the lo ishtere. But maybe the emurim, these parts of the animal that are really supposed to be burned up, so maybe we should then say that no, they're not okay to eat. So Amar Rava answers 4 or 5 lines down. Tzadi Vav Amud Aleph. Amar Rava Michte. We need to analyze the following: Tumas emurim mehecha israbi. Where did we even learn about to start with the Isser of eating the emurim of the Korban Pesach? So says the Gemara, we learned it from the basar itself. Says the Gemara as follows: Mitumas basar, dichsiv asher laHashem. The pasuk on the side of the Gemara, a full pasuk that speaks about this, and we says asher laHashem. What do those words include? The rabos es ha'imurim. And therefore, because we learn out the emurim, the Isser of eating the emurim, because we learn them out from tumas basar, and because the tumas basar is overridden because it's Pesach Haba B'Tumah, therefore says the Gemara as follows, 6-7 lines down. Kol hecha de'isei l'tumas basar. When there is a status of tumas basar, when there's an isser of tumas basar, namely in a year when it's a regular year, not Pesach Haba B'Tumah, then isei l'tumas emurim. Then you're going to have the isser of eating the tumas emurim. But kol hecha de'leisei l'tumas basar, in a year where there is no isser of tumas basar, because it is Pesach Haba B'Tumah, then leisei l'tumas emurim, and there will not then be an isser of tumas emurim. So therefore, to go back to where we started tonight, Rav Yosef wants to know, in a year of Pesach Haba B'Tumah, if you eat the emurim, did you violate the isser of deraisa? The answer is no, because the isser of the emurim is hooked in to the isser of the tumas basar. Because the tumas basar is mutter to eat in a year of Pesach Haba B'Tumah, therefore, if one were to eat the emurim during a year of Pesach Haba B'Tumah, it would not be an isser deraisa. 10 lines down, one more question before we get to the new Mishnah. Boy Reb Zera, Emurei Pesach Mitzrayim Hecha Aktarinhu. Where were the emurim brought on the year that Pesach took place in Mitzrayim, the year of all the Makos, the year that the Jews actually left Mitzrayim? Where were the emurim burnt? They were in Mitzrayim. They didn't have where were they? Where were they going to be mocked or everything? What? Nothing, and maybe a bama might have been mutter. It could be, but it didn't. We don't seem to see in the Pesukim that they did this. So says the Gemara, Amar le Abaye, Uman leimalan de lo shviski avud. Who says they didn't make their own pit, their own spit, their own little thing? Who says maybe they didn't do that? Yeah, I guess it's kind of like a bama, whatever. The point is maybe they burned it that way. The Odin, furthermore, we know there wasn't a Mizbeach because Hatan and Rav Yosef, Gimel Mizbechos Hayusham, there were 3 places of Mizbeach, but as we will see and as Rashi highlights, it wasn't for the sake of Emurin, it was only for the sake of the Dam to do the Zrikas Hadam. What were those 3 places? Al Hamashko Ve'al Shtem Mezuzos. It was only on the lintel and on the doorpost. That's where we put the blood. And that was our effectively, that was our mizbeach, that was our zrikas hadam, and then says the Gemara right before the Mishnah, "Vasumi di achrina lo hava." There was nothing else to do. So they didn't really burn the emurim unless it was on the spit itself, but there was no mizbeach that year. And that brings us to the next Mishnah, and this next Mishnah continues a topic that we just concluded with, which is Pesach Mitzrayim. What is the difference between Pesach Mitzrayim and Pesach Doros, which is us? We are Pesach Doros. Ma bein Pesach Mitzrayim le Pesach Doros. What's the difference between Pesach of that year, a few thousand years ago when we left Egypt, to the way that we keep Pesach now? Says the Gemara, Pesach Mitzrayim When it came to Pesach Mitzrayim, mekcho mi be'asor, we needed to pick out our animal on the 10th of the month. That was a din doraisa. By that time, it's not true now. That's not true now. We had to make sure that there was hazah, the sprinkling of blood, be'agudas ezo, with the hyssop, with the branches there. That was a din doraisa then, that only applied then. The nechal b'chipazon had to be eaten quickly, that only applied then. The laila echad had to be eaten in one night. Interesting, we'll have to see what that means in the Gemara. Upesach doros noe kol shiva. And in regards to Pesach of nowadays, Pesach doros of the future generations, which is us, noe kol shiva, we have a custom for all 7 days. What custom do we have for all 7 days? What are we talking about? So we'll see in the Gemara what that means. Minalan. The Gemara opens a third of the way down. What is going on here in regards to the Pesach Mitzrayim, where we said it had to be the 10th of the month? So how do we know that it had to be the 10th of the month? Because the Torah tells us. The pasuk says, Dabru el kol adas Yisrael lemor be'asor lachodesh. So be'asor lachodesh hazeh vayikchu, on this month vayikchu, and then you should purchase the animal. Zeh mekcho mi be'asor. That's how we know that it has to be on the 10th of the month. Ve'ein pesach doros mekcho be'asor mi be'asor. So only zeh, only this month, only this Pesach by Pesach Mitzrayim. That's where we have a din that one has to set aside the animal by the 10th of the month. But Pesach doros, no, there's no need for ein pesach doros mekcho mi be'asor. The Gemara is now going to ask 8 different questions based not on the specific answer that we just gave, but on the method that we just gave, which is the word zeh, or we'll see the word bo, which is this specific. When we see by a pasuk that relates to Pesach Mitzrayim the word zeh or bo, specific, does it really limit us to that day, yes or no? And we're going to ask 8 different questions, which will bring us all the way to the 2 dots at the bottom of the page, and then we will continue with other parts of the Mishnah. So says the Gemara 3 lines before the wide lines, Elameata, if what you're saying is that the word zeh teaches me something exclusive about Mitzrayim and something, therefore, that doesn't apply about Pesach Doros, then what about the following? We know the Torah says, V'haya lachem lemishmeres ad arba asar yom lachodesh hazeh. What do we see? Until the 14th day of this month. Hachanami. Zeta un bikor daled yamim kodem shchita. One of these, Pesach Mitzrayim, seems to require daled yamim bikor. You need 4 days of making sure that there's no mum, that there are no blemishes on the animal. And maybe we would say ve'ein acher ton bikor. And maybe nobody else required, no other korbanos require this, but that can't be. First long line, ve'atanya ben bag omer minayin l'tamid. Shaton bikor daled yamim kodem shchita. We see by other korbanos that in fact we do that. By the korban tamid, we have 4 days of bikor to make sure that there are no blemishes on the animal. How do we know that there by the tamid that in fact we require those 4 days? Shnei amar. The following drasha, tishmeru la'akriv li b'moado ulahalan omer, and a pasuk that's contrasting with that says as follows: Ve'elachem lemishmeres ad arba asar malahalan ton bikor daled yamim kodem shchita afkan tor bikor daled yamim kodem shchita. So what do we see from the world of the parshas tamid? We see that by the korban tamid that we do require bikor daled yamim, that we need 4 days. So how can the pasuk tell me hazeh that it seems to imply that only by Pesach Mitzrayim that we need 4 days of bikor to ensure that there's no mum in the animal? Not true. It's even true by the korban tamid. So answers the Gemara, shiny hasam. It's different by the korban tamid. Why? Because it says over there dichsiv tishmeru, and therefore by the yes, it's true that in principle the word hazeh should exclude everything from Pesach Mitzrayim, and maybe only there we need daled yamim bikor. But it's true in general. But the korban tamid does get it because it has the word tishmeru, that we have to protect the animal and we have to make sure that there is no mum. Asks the Gemara 5 lines into the wide lines halfway down to Pesach Doros Nami. But even by our types of Pesach, forget Pesach Mitzrayim. Now even by us we should be concerned. Nami haksiv avatos avodazos b'chodesh hazeh sheyehu kol avodos chodesh zeh kazeh. All of them should be the same. So therefore, says the Gemara, you're right. Elahahu hazeh lemeute Pesach sheni dekavase. You're right. The word of hazeh that we were using by Pesach Mitzrayim, that we saw at the beginning of the question of V'haya lachem lemishmeres, that you're right. It's not meant to teach us that Pesach Mitzrayim is different than Pesach Doros, that the Pesach of old is different than the Pesach of today, but rather to contrast Pesach Rishon to Pesach Sheni, and that you cannot learn anything from there. Question number 2. Elameata dechsi, we have a pasuk that writes V'achlu es habasar b'layla hazeh. It says you have to eat it this night. This is Pesach Mitzrayim. So what do we do? What do we learn from there? Hachanami. Maybe we should say Dezen ne'echal b'layla vein achar ne'echal b'layla. Maybe we should have eaten it only at a different time. Here we see it's only at nighttime. Amar kra ve'avatas avoda. We said no. So we really learned that the din applies even to Pesach Doros, because it says by Pesach Doros ve'avata savoda that you have to eat the animal, and it's even going to apply at night. But if that's true, says the Gemara, Ela hazeh lamali. If it's true that Pesach Doros, we learn the din that it can be eaten at night from the pasuk of avata savoda, then what does the word hazeh indicate in the pasuk? That's what we started with. We thought that the word hazeh in this pasuk indicated something specific about Pesach Mitzrayim to not be applied by Doros. But then we see it by Pesach Doros that we already have a pasuk that indicates that we have the status of eating the korban Pesach at night. So what does the word hazeh mean? Hazeh lamali lichad Rabbi Lazar ben Azariah the Rabbi Akiva, the machlokes that we are familiar with about eating up until chatzos. Do we say that? And that's why some people are careful to not eat anything after chatzos, or do we say that it's the whole night? That's a machlokes elsewhere with Rabbi Lazar ben Azariah and Rabbi Akiva, and they argue over the word hazeh. And that is question 2. Let's try question number 3, 2/3 of the way down. Elamayata. If it's true that we're allowed to learn from the word hazeh, and therefore to possibly differentiate between Pesach Rishon, Pesach Mitzrayim and Pesach Doros El Me'ata, the Torah teaches us V'chol Arel Lo Yochal Bo, that a person who's uncircumcised cannot eat the korban Pesach. That seems to only apply Bo on that particular day. Bo Hachanami de Bo Eno Ochel, only by Pesach of Mitzrayim that the Arel is not allowed to eat, but it implies about Ochel bePesach Doros. Maybe a person who's Arel Taka could eat from a korban Pesach today if there was a Beis Hamikdash. So it says the Gemara, Amar Kra V'avata, by Pesach Doros it says V'avata, and therefore the Arel is not allowed to eat even by Pesach Doros. If that's true, then the word Bo of Chol Arel Lo Yochal Bo no longer has a purpose, because we tried to make a diuk from the word Bo that it teaches us that an Arel is restricted from eating the korban Pesach only by Pesach Mitzrayim year 1, but years 2 through whatever 3,000 over many Pesachs we've had. So says the Gemara, maybe we should have assumed that an Arel is allowed to eat. Says the Gemara, no, we know from Ve'avanta that the Arel is not allowed to eat even by Pesach Doros. Well, if that's true, Ela Bo Lamali, why then does the pasuk by Arel say the word Bo? Answers the Gemara, Bo Eino Ochel. Fascinating. The Gemara says that an Arel is taka true that the Arel is not allowed to eat from the korban Pesach. However, an Arel is allowed to eat matzah and is obligated to eat matzah and maror as well. And that is one of the things that we learn from the word Bo. Good. Says the Gemara, yet another question. Elamayata, we're about 20 lines from the bottom or so, 2/3 of the way down. Elamayata, we just learned about Arel. What about Kol Ben Nechar? The Rashi here points out, the Meforshim point out, we're talking about a mumar, someone who rejects part of halacha. A mumar is not a person who does Nisr Doraisa. A lot of us have violated, unfortunately, Surah Doraisa. That's not good. But a mumar is someone who basically rejects one of the fundamental tenets of the Torah. You don't believe in bris milah, you don't believe in this, you don't believe in that. So I did a bris for a family. The father had such a hard time with bris milah, and he made this comment like, I wish this wasn't a mitzvah in the Torah. Is that a mumar? No, he's not. It's not a mumar. He just doesn't like his kid going through something painful. It's not a mumar. A mumar is someone who says, I believe in everything except for Shabbos. That's a mumar. That person is machal. Pasha. Actions speak louder than words. Yeah, maybe in some frames. We spoke about this. It's not so pasha. Yeah. It's not good. But anyways, yeah, he's for sure not a mumar, not in that regard. So anyways, what about a kol ben nechar lo yochal bo? That's what the pasuk says by Pesach Mitzrayim. That by Pesach Mitzrayim, a kol ben nechar lo yochal bo. What does that imply? Hachinami de bo eno ochel. Only by Pesach Mitzrayim should that have been true. But maybe we would say aval ochel hu Pesach ledoros. Maybe the ben nechar, the mumar, should be able to eat from the korban Pesach by Pesach doros. Says the Gemara, nope. Amar Krabavat, the same pasuk we quoted before, that no, even by korban Pesach ledoros, that a ben nechar is not allowed to partake. Why then does the pasuk say bo by kol ben nechar lo yochal bo? Says the Gemara, because bo. What does the pasuk teach us? Hamaras das poseles vein hamaras das poseles bitruma. Bo hamaras das poseles. Only by the korban Pesach is hamaras das poseles. Is this mumar status? Is it posel? However, ein hamaras das poseles bitruma. But you're still allowed to be involved in truma. That the fact that you're a mumar doesn't stop you from partaking in that mitzvah. It's an unbelievable thing. But if you're a mumar, you're not allowed to participate in other mitzvahs. It's kind of like a hashkafically fascinating. You're already rejecting one thing. You're not shaykh to something else. It's almost like you like left the machanet. So hashkafically, it's not so simple. This comes up in the bris milah world all the time, that a person who is a mumar l'davar echad, they're not allowed to. The milah is not kosher. So I've been in scenarios, and I got a kula from Rabbi First like this, that if I'm choshesh that a family is not going to use an Orthodox moel, for a Shabbos bris that I can't get to, so we push off the bris to Sunday. Why? Because what happens if I am not available? They call a conservative or reform moel, whoever, and they drive to the bris on Shabbos. So then they were Mechal Shabbos. The bris is not a bris, and forget the Chil Shabbos of driving. The bris was a Chil Shabbos. So it's really not so pashut. So whenever I have a chush that a family is going to be using someone that is otherwise not a ben Torah, someone who's not a from Jew, so then he has given some latitude to be lenient with that. It's not so simple. There's some nuances here. It's not a blanket statement, but it's that is a basic direction. So we learned about two things just now. We learned about Arel lo yochal bo and ben nechar lo yochal bo. And the Gemara wants to know, why do we need both of them? V'itzrich, 3/4 of the way down, halfway into the thick lines. V'itzrich lemichtav Arel, v'itzrich lemichtav ben nechar. The Gemara needed to teach both cases, one of the Arel and one of the Ben Nechar. Why do we need that? Because the Ikasav Rachmana Arel, if the Torah had only spoken about an arm, L'shem demais, because it's unpleasant, it's not good. A person does, it's not ideal. It's mice. It's disgusting, says the Gemara. But Ben Nechar lo mais, it's nothing physical. There's no physical attribute to his mumar status. So maybe Eimalo, I would have thought the halacha would have been different. Therefore, we needed to teach both cases. V'yashmin and Ben Nechar. Had I started with the case of Ben Nechar, where the person was a mumar, the mishum de ein he's not really committed to a Kadosh Baruch Hu. He's picked his own religion. As one of my rabbeim used to say, if you think that one thing in the Torah should be different, then your religion is in Judaism, it's Kereshism. Now you've changed everything and you made up your own religion. So this guy is ein libo l'shamayim, is a mumar. He's created his own religion. Aval arel de libo l'shamayim, like a person who's an arel, it's not dafka that he's a mumar. Maybe he couldn't for technical reasons. That's a big shaila. If a person is an arel because of medical reasons, he's not allowed to get a circumcision. Tilati the korban pesach. That's a machlokes in the Rishonim. That's a big deal as to whether or not his p'tur, his ones rachmana patre, is enough to enable him to eat a korban pesach. That's a deal in the Rishonim. So maybe aval arel delibo l'shamayim emalo tzricha. Therefore, we needed both cases. This is now case number 5. Question number 5. Elameata. Says the Gemara, Toshav v'sachir lo yochal bo. These are different types of avadim. Says the Gemara, Hachanami. There it says lo yochal bo. Hachanami de bo hu eino ochel. Maybe that was only true by Pesach Mitzrayim. Aval ochel hu bepesach doros. Maybe we can assume that this person, this eved, the Toshav and Sachir, that they are allowed to partake in Pesach doros. Amar Krav Avata. No, we learn from Avata that he is included in Pesach doros. If that's true, what does the word bo mean when it says Toshav v'sachir lo yochal bo? Ela bo lamali. Says the Gemara, bo. This Gemara is very, very difficult. The Mefarshim it's very unclear as to what this line means. The Gemara seems to have copied the line from the previous quote by the Ben Nechar. What is it, right? Bo hamaras das poselas. Where do his problems show up? His problems show up by the Korban Pesach. Bein hamaras das poselas b'truma, but he's included in truma. What does that have to do? What does that have to do with the Toshav v'sachir? It's just a halachic status of an eved. So the Rishonim are struggle. The Mefarshim struggle with this Gemara. It's not a very simple Gemara to understand. Next case, Elameata umalta oso. The halacha is that if there are those in your home that you are obligated to do a bris upon them when they're of age, of course, and again, all medical issues notwithstanding, umalta oso az yochal bo. You have to make sure everybody else has a bris. Hachanami de bo eno ochel. We might have thought there too that maybe only by Pesach Mitzrayim that you would have been limited if you yourself are circumcised, but the person in your home is not circumcised, your child or your eved for whom you're obligated to give a bris. About ochel pesach l'doros. Maybe we would have thought that you, who did not give the bris to your child or to your eved, that you're allowed to partake pesach doros. No, you're not. You might have assumed that that's mutter, amar kra, but we in fact know that you're not allowed to partake in it because it says v'avata. If that's true, then why, when the pasuk says umalto so as yochal bo, why does it say the word bo? Al bo lamali, 8 lines from the bottom. Says the Gemara, bo mila sechara v'avada me'akebes. It's taka true, the word bo teaches us something, but it's not about Pesach Doros. Everyone agrees that by Pesach Doros that if you, as the Baal Abayit, if you as the father didn't give the child the bris, that you're not allowed to partake. But what are you still allowed to partake in? You, the guy who did not give the bris to his children, so you can still partake in Truma. Elameata, question number 7 lines from the bottom. Elameata d'chsiv etzem leish beruvo. We know that there's a nisr in the Torah. Etzem leish beruvo is the pasuk that was quoted by Pesach Sheni. That's why if you look in the Mefarshim here, it actually corrects this to say etzem lo sish beruvo. That's why there's a little mark here. There's two psukim. There's etzem lo sishberuvo, which we've spoken about already, which refers to Pesach Rishon, and there's etzem lo yishberuvo, which was quoted by Pesach Sheni. So the Gemara says if we're using this pasuk to question Pesach Mitzrayim, it can't be yishberu because that's Pesach Sheni pasuk. That doesn't work. That's why the Gemara corrects this etzem lo sishberuvo, and then the Gemara asks as follows: Hachanami, what do we see from etzem lo sishberuvo? Hachanami the boeno shover val shover b'Pesach doros. Maybe we should assume that today, if the Beis Hamikdash was rebuilt right now, and in a month or so we bring the Korban Pesach, almost exactly a month. This Friday would be a month. It'll be Yud Daled. So then Elamayata dechsi be'etzem lishbur hachanami debo eno shover val shover b'Pesach doros. So maybe we should assume there's no iser of etzem lo sishberuvo in such a case. Amar Kra says the Gemara, not true. There is an iser d'oraisa of etzem lo sishberuvo even ledoros based on the pasuk ve'avadta. I elabo lamali. If we're saying that we know that Pesach ledoros has an iser of etzem lo sishberuvo from the pasuk of ve'avadta, then why did the pasuk say etzem lo sishberuvo? Why say the word bo? It seems extra. Bo. Ela bo lamali says Gemara bo bekasher v'lo bepasul. This is a diuk that we saw many days ago, many weeks ago at this point, that when it comes to the Isser Doraisa of etzem lo sishberuvo, when does it apply? Bo bekasher. Only if the animal is a kasher v'lo bepasul. But if the animal happened to be a pasul, then there is no Isser of etzem lo sishberuvo. Good. Next, eighth and final question on this particular sugya, 5 lines from the bottom. Elamayata. The Torah says in regards to Pesach Mitzrayim, al tochel mimenu na, you're not allowed to eat the Korban Pesach if it's only partially cooked. That's what we said. No, it's partially cooked. Mimenu, we make the diuk from the word mimenu. Mimenu yata ochel, aval ata ochel na bePesach doros. Maybe we should assume that when it says mimenu only here, only when it comes to Pesach Mitzrayim, that's when we say that you're not allowed to eat an only partially cooked Korban Pesach, partially roasted, maybe. And maybe by Pesach Doros, it should be mutter. Amar kra ve'avadata. No, we know from the word ve'avadata that when you do the Pesach Doros, it has to be like the Pesach Rishon, and therefore, lo sochlu mimenu na, al tochlu mimenu na, that you're not allowed to eat the Korban Pesach when it's only partially roasted. So says the Gemara, if that's true, ela mimena lamali, why then do we have the word mimena? Says the Gemara, lichid Rabba Amar Rav Yitzchak, because everybody knows what Rabba Amar Rav Yitzchak says, except for all of us who don't know what Rabba Amar Rav Yitzchak says, which is me. Take a look at Rashi, 2 lines from the bottom. Rashi says, Kid the Rabba Amar Rav Yitzchak be'perek ha'arel. It says in a different parak, Ne'amar mimenu bePesach, v'ne'amar mimenu beMaiser. So we see that the word mimenu is used in 2 places. Ma'loholan arel aser bePesach, avkan arel aser beMaiser. So the word mimenu, which is what Rabba Amar Rav Yitzchak was teaching us, is that an arel is not allowed to be included in Meiser. Good. Says the Gemara, 3 lines from the bottom. The food by Pesach Mitzrayim had to be eaten quickly. Says the Gemara, Binalan, where do we know that from? Mefurusha pasuk in the Torah. Damar kra v'achaltem oso b'chipazon. Oso ne'echal b'chipazon. That year, Pesach Mitzrayim, that year the food was eaten quickly. However, ve'ein acher ne'echal b'chipazon. That would not be true for Pesach Doros. Says the Gemara, Pesach Doros noe kol shiva, quoting from our Mishnah. That was the last part of our Mishnah, 1/3 of the way down. The Mishnah has this strange line that it says Pesach Doros noe kol shiva. Well, it says the Gemara, Amai koi. What are you? Last line. What are you talking about? Amai koi. What were you referring to? If you're talking about the Korban Pesach itself, Pesach kol shiva mi'ika, you only have 1 day where you bring the Korban Pesach. It's Yud Daled, you eat it the night of Tesvav, Shalom HaYisrael. El Acham, it says the Gemara, top of that Tzadi Vav Medbeis, says the Gemara, it must be that when the Mishnah says that it's Noe kol shiva, that is talking about Chametz. Says the Gemara, Michlal, what's implied from there? So that's difficult, because if you look in the Mishnah, it implies, Michlal, says the Gemara, the Pesach Mitzrayim Laila Echad V'Sulo. It seems to be that only that first night would be problematic. V'Hatanya, but the Brisa says that Chametz wouldn't only apply that first night. V'Hatanya, Rabbi Yossi Aglili Omri Minayin LePesach Mitzrayim Shein Chimutz Noeg El Yom Echad. So there we see that Rabbi Yossi Aglili was of the opinion that the Isra of Chametz in that year didn't apply all 7 days, but it also wasn't only the first night. It was Yom Echad. It was the whole day. And how does the Brisa know that Rabbi Yossi Aglili held this way? Talmud Omer Lo Yachel Chametz, because one pasuk says you're not allowed to eat chametz, but samichlei hayom atem yotzin. So it's implied from the brisa that we just saw, lines 2, 3, and 4. The Rabbi Yossi Aglili is of the opinion that the Isser D'Oraisa of chametz in Pesach Mitzrayim lasted for 24 hours from the beginning of Pesach by Shkia, going in from Yud Dalet to Tesvav Nisan until 24 hours later when the sun set again. Yet it implies from our Mishnah, like the top line says, Michlal de Pesach Mitzrayim Laila Echad V'Sulon. So which one is it? In the times of Mitzrayim, was the Isser Darais of Chametz only the night of, or was it the night of and the day that followed, 24-hour period? Says the Gemara, the Hachi Kamar 5 lines down. This will then bring us to the Mishnah. Here is Pshat, 3 separate things we need to know. Laila Echad, in regards to Korban Pesach, that applied by the first night. V'hu adin lePesach Doros, that the mitzvah d'oraisa of Korban Pesach applies only on the first night. That applies by Pesach Mitzrayim and Pesach Doros. V'chimutzo kol hayom, in regards to Chametz, the halacha by Pesach Mitzrayim is that it applied all day, 24 hours, just like the Brisa says. Pesach Doros noi kol shiva. Now we know what our Mishnah meant when it says that it's noi kol shiva, that one is obligated to not have chametz throughout the entire duration of Pesach. Tzadi Vavam and Beis, we're at the Mishnah, 7-8 lines down. Amar Rabbi Yeshua, Shamati, Tmuras Pesach Kreva, Utmuras Pesach Eno Kreva. Says Rabbi Yeshua, I heard, but I don't know what applies to what here. He says, I heard that in some cases there's a Tmuras Pesach that's Kreva, that if a Korban Pesach is replaced, if you lost the initial one that you set aside, whatever the case may be, we'll get into that a little bit tonight. So I heard in some cases it's Kreva, that the Korban is brought. I also heard a Tmuras Pesach Eno Kreva. I heard it sometimes it's not brought, but ainly the Farish, and I don't know Pshat. I don't know exactly how I'm supposed to figure that out. Take a look at Rashi just to our left. Ainly the Farish, Shachachti al Eza Shamati. To karev ve'aleza shemati tiredet. We should. I forgot which one we say that the animal should be shechted, and which one we say the animal should be tiredet. It should go out to graze until it is sold. So it says the Gemara Amar Rabbi Akiva. Says the Mishnah Amar Rabbi Akiva. Don't worry, I've got you, Rabbi Yoshua. Ani afaresh. I know you're unclear, but I'm not. I will tell you exactly what's going on. And if you follow along here, you'll see that the basic thing that Rabbi Akiva is talking about has nothing to do with Tmura. So remember what Rabbi Yeshua said. He's talking about Tmura. That was his whole frame. Rabbi Akiva answers a little differently. Take a look. HaPesach shenimsa kodem shchitas haPesach. Let's say at a Korban Pesach, animal A. Animal A gets lost, so you reappoint animal B, or you appoint animal B so that you can bring animal B as a Korban. Well, you lost number A, fine. HaPesach shenimsa, and then you find animal A, kodem shchitas haPesach. So the halacha is that animal is yireh anshi yista'ev. The animal A that was lost has to graze until it's sold. Its money then goes towards shlamim. So animal B as well needs to do the same. But the basic din is not about the Torah. The basic din is about animal A. Fine. Let's say you find animal A that was lost after the Pesach was brought, so animal B was already shechted. So the halacha is that animal A is karev shlamim, so the animal A is going to be, it's after the Korban Pesach, because animal B was shechted for Korban Pesach. So the halacha is that animal A is karev shlamim. Here we don't say that the animal goes out to graze, and also had it been that animal was also replaced, any replacements of this animal, third animal, fourth animal, whatever it is, any iteration of replacements of this animal would be Korban Shlamim. Says the Gemara, Rabbi Yoshua asked this question about Tmuras Pesach Kreva, Tmuras Pesach Eina Kreva, but that's very, very strange because the answer to his question was really just about Korban Pesach. Rabbi Akiva added in B'chein Tmuraso, but Be'etzem, Rabbi Akiva's answer was not about Tmura. It was really just a question about, Pesach. So that's the Gemara is bothered by that. The Lema Pesach Karev, Pesach Eno Karev. Why didn't Rabbi Yoshua? What was he remembering? Why did Rabbi Yoshua? Whoever taught Rabbi Yoshua, why was Rabbi Yoshua taught to say that this was a question about Tmura? After all, it's really not a question about Tmura. I guess it has an application to it, but it's really not about Tmura. So it says the Gemara, second line, about a third of the way down, Hakamash Malan, what do we learn from here? That there are times that there's a Tmuras Pesach, which is not Karev, that you have a replacement of a Korban Pesach that's not brought. When does this apply? This is the Reisha of our Mishnah, where if you have animal A that's lost, and then you have animal B, which is a Tmura, and then you find animal A, both of those animals cannot be brought, or they cannot be Karev. You have to dedicate a new animal. So that was the Chiddush of Rabbi Yoshua. That's why he framed the question as in Tmura. That's what he remembered from his Rebbe, though he didn't remember when it applied. But that's why he added in the word. Itmar, Machlokas. What is the breaking point for which we determine, I lost the animal, and now we're moving forward with animal B? So says the Gemara, Itmar, that's a Machlokas Amoraim. Rabba Amar Kodem Shchita Ula Achar Shchita Shaninu. Just a question of when the knife cuts. If before the knife cuts, they find animal A, stop the press. Everybody stop. We found animal A, which means A and B have to go out and graze until we sell them. Now we need to get animal C to bring the korban. That's what Reb Zera says, that the line in the sand is the shechita. That can't possibly get a later moment than that. Reb Zera amar no kodem chatzos la'achar chatzos shaninu. All we're talking about is when the halachic time begins, at the earliest threshold, which is before or after chatzos. Ula Reb Zera, wait a minute, Reb Zera, you said that an animal is going to be karev, animal B will be karev, even if you find the lost animal A after chatzos, but before it's nishchat. How can you say that? Says the Gemara, Ula Reb Zera, haktani kodem shchitas haPesach. It says in the Mishnah, kodem shchitas haPesach, if you find it before the shchitas haPesach. How can you say that the line in the sand is the time of chatzos? That's not correct. The line in the sand is not the time of chatzos. It should be the shchita. That's what our Mishnah says. Reb Zera, what are you talking about? So what does Reb Zera answer? Ema, he says, kodem zman shchitas haPesach. It's the zman of shchitas haPesach, not the shchita itself. Namely, it's chatzos and not the time that the knife actually does its work of the actual shechita. And in fact, Reb Zera has a raya for this from a brisa kitanoi. The brisa says like that there's a machlokes in the Tanaim. HaPesach shenimtza kodem shechita yireh la'achar shechita yikrav. That if you find a korban Pesach before the actual shechita takes place, that's like the shita of Rabbah. So then the halacha is that it needs to go out and graze, and then you'll sell it, and then you'll take that money and use it for shlamim. But la'achar shchita yikrav, if you find the animal afterwards, it will be karev as a shlamim. It won't be brought as a korban Pesach, but at least it can be brought as a shlamim. Rabbi Eliezer Omer kodem chatzos yireh la'achar chatzos yikrav. So he says, Rabbi Eliezer says that kodem chatzos yireh la'achar chatzos yikrav, that if you find it before chatzos hayom. So the machlokas Rabbah and Rav Zera is the line in the sand as it relates to tmura. Is that line in the sand chatzos hayom, the very beginning of the halachic time when the korban Pesach can be karev? Or do we say, no, it's not about that. Rather, it is about the actual shechita, which may be hours later, whenever it is. So that's a machlokas tanaim that is reflected in the Amorim between Rabbah and Reb Zera. One last little piece, just a few more lines, and then we'll stop. And our Mishnah had said, achar shchitas haPesach yav shlamim, that if we find animal A that was lost, we had replaced it with B. We find animal A, but we found him after animal B was already nishchat for the korban Pesach. So then animal A is brought as a shlamim. That's what the Gemara says. 2 dots halfway down. Sadi Vav Medbei says the Gemara as follows: Amar Rava, Lo Shanu. When do we say that animal A, which was found after the shechita of its tmura, of its replacement of animal B, when do we say that animal A is brought as a shlamim? Lo Shanu elo shenimtza achar shechita, v'heimir bo achar shechita. Once it's been replaced already with another animal. Aval nimtza kodem shechita, v'heimir bo achar shechita. If animal A was found beforehand, but we didn't make its replacement until afterwards, so then then we would say that no, you're not allowed to do that because the animal was found beforehand and the tmura was only done afterward. Then we would say that it's lo kreva, that you're not allowed to bring a korban shlamim. We're going to stop at Esvei, 1/3 of the way down. Emir Hashem will pick up on Motzei Shabbos at 8:40 p.m. Wishing you all a freilich and Purim and a beautiful Shabbos. Welcome to you.